Welcome to another edition of 1 in 15. As ever, I'll get my guests to introduce themselves.
Hi there, I'm Chris Morris and I am the digital lead at Christian Aid.
Brilliant. It's great to have you here today, Chris. As you know, the purpose of these interviews is to think about the one big thing that's been dominating people's thinking. What is that for you at the moment?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So at Christian Aid, we've been trying to really get digital off the ground for a number of years to make it, a real success, both in terms of our fundraising, but also just ensuring continuity and that we're a bit more joined up as an organisation in getting digital more of a thing, getting it successful. So coming out of COVID recently, it's changed the goalposts a little bit, and that we've learned quite a lot about our audiences, our supporters, how they respond to digital, because we've been restricted in that we can't do any face-to-face fundraising, we can't knock on people's doors in the classic Christian Aid way. So we've had to lean on digital and become more dependent on digital to grow our fundraising. So so my main challenge now is how do we build on that? We've been forced to work in a certain way with what we've got with digital. We've been surprised that our supporters have reacted in the way that they have, because they're such loyal supporters to the organisation. Now, how do we grow it? How do we make it bigger, make it more planned and intentional? That's my main challenge.
Cool. I mean, that sounds like quite a big one, and my my heart goes out to you wrestling with that. I mean, it occurs to me that to some extent, people in your position, the pandemic and the lockdown wasn't the thing that forced your hand, but it forced you to maybe act quicker or to start exploring areas that you were hoping to do at some distant part. What's been the biggest challenge of the last kind of 6 months in wrestling with that stuff?
I suppose relying on the income has been the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. But also trying to press home some confidence within the organisation that digital is the route forward. We're not the most modern of organisations. I think we're getting there now, but trying to prove the value of digital as a thing. Previously maybe that was more difficult than it is now, because we haven't had any choice but to go digital with a lot of our fundraising. So in a sense, that's worked quite well for me and for my team within Christian Aid, that we've been able to prove the value of it. I just think we need to bring people along with us internally to keep going on that journey. Yeah.
I suppose, what you said there is interesting, because I guess there's a momentum, isn't there now, that maybe wasn't there pre-pandemic, because everyone's knows how to use WhatsApp now, or has been in a Zoom meeting, and stuff that might have been seen as kind of quirky or not particularly useful, or something that they wouldn't particularly see to be engaged, particularly with a certain generation, isn't the issue. Although I'm really conscious still that there'll be a lot of technologically poor people out there who haven't even now got access to some of that, and I guess that remains a challenge for charities such as yourselves. The people who've got the capacity, you can do all kinds of really exciting things. I'm sure you've got a load of things up your sleeve, but there's still people who haven't got that capacity. How do you digitally engage with people who haven't got the equipment to do it, or the know-how?
Yeah, so that's all about going back a couple of steps and just and doing the research, finding out the insights on your supporters. Where are they? Where are they going online? Where can we meet them? And we've got a research team at Christian Aid. We're well capable of doing that and finding those things out, getting the insights on them. But the world and his wife are in front of a computer at the moment, so there is a need to capitalise on that from a fundraising point of view. It sounds a bit stark maybe, but we've got to do that, because that's what we do as an organisation to survive and to keep the fundraising going.
Yeah, and I can see that. I hear you that it might sound stark, but equally I'm thinking, I know some of the pressures that charities are under at the moment. Everyone's much more conscious of the limitations of their own resources. So perhaps they're having deeper questions about where they're able to support other people who have even less. So you mentioned that you're kind of, I guess, equally surprised and not surprised if loyal supporters have have come on board, have engaged in ways that you maybe couldn't have or wouldn't have expected.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the ways that have been particularly encouraging over the last 6 months or so.
So even things where running an activity through Facebook, running Facebook challenges. We've done a lot of that both through Christian Aid Week, which was in May, and through our coronavirus emergency appeal, which was very successful for us. So just running new activities, trying things out. It's a bit of a test and learn approach, really, just to see, if we can meet with our supporters in the same territory. So that's been massively successful. But I think what we need to do next is to really push the boundaries. We can't be doing virtual quizzes for the next 2-3 years. People will, every charity is doing that now. And whilst it works well with our supporters, and particularly our warm supporters, we need to think what's next. How can we think? What does a digital strategy look like ongoing? Yeah. COVID is the kind of springboard for that. It's like, okay, we've gone through that. Now, how can we set out a new plan, a new strategy for where we want to go forward with digital, and take inspiration from what other charities, not just charities, but other organisations in different sectors as well. How can we meet with our supporters to create a rich experience and to make our supporters want to give to Christian Aid? How can we keep? Chinny talked about in her 15 minutes with you about global neighbours and creating a rich experience from globally in terms of what our beneficiaries are going through.
Yeah.
Increasing our capacity to do that digitally is going to be more important as well. So it's a constant thread of interesting content and stories that are coming from those countries, not just sort of dip in, dip out approach. Every few months we see new and different stories. Digital should be the enabler for how we can bring some of those real stories to life a bit more.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of depending on where you're sitting in it, it's quite an exciting or maybe a fraught time, isn't it, for a lot of organisations, charities perhaps particularly, because you're in a place where you're forced to try stuff knowing that not everything you're going to try is going to work. And for charities, that's got a massive risk that is more kind of up front of centre than perhaps some of us as individuals would with the risk that we take. What do you think are some of those, without giving away your secrets in what you're planning around the corner, what are some of the innovations that you think either Christian Aid or people in your position are going to be forced to try with, and which ones do you think are most likely to work?
I think all of the work we've done at Christian Aid already on cashless donations is going to be a lot bigger. I don't think cash will be around for a lot longer, if I'm honest. So the more we can, when lockdown is when the restrictions are sort of lessened a little bit, we're going to need to go out and meet our supporters and find ways of fundraising that's a bit maybe lighter touch. And all those sort of contactless payment methods are going to be really valuable for us. The more we can do in that space, the better. There's lots of innovation that we can think about there. But how we connect all the dots from a digital user experience, supporter experience, that's going to be key, really. Serving them with interesting content, serving them with easy ways to donate, so that we don't. So we don't take them out of their comfort zone too much. That's the critical thing, really. It's not rocket science. It's just giving them easier ways to donate to their favourite charity.
And that I mean, it's interesting you make that point about cash, because I think you're right, and I think we've seen that trajectory, haven't we, with in the public transport system going almost entirely plastic or electronic. And that brings with it some costs. That brings it, like the homeless population, I think, particularly suffering with the Oyster card availability, getting things. But also, I've done street collecting for Christian Aid and other charities, and there is that, it's always a little bit nervous, isn't it? Because that some of the money you're getting in is kind of a thoughtless donation. It's kind of people, they recognise the charity or the cause enough, they feel enough to want to respond. But actually it's just, well, what have I got in my pocket and that's thrown in? And one of the most frequent things we were always having back as collectors was, well, I haven't got any change, sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm really conscious that that's also a narrative that I offer. If I haven't got change, because often I haven't, and also because I maybe don't want to donate and it's a useful excuse.
Yeah. I
So
think that whole model will change. I think, fundraising with a bucket probably won't exist for very much longer. So we need to think, what is our new version of that? Not just Christian Aid, but every charity needs to think through. And for us, it's not just on the street; it's in a church. And so that, we've been doing a lot of what does fundraising in the church look like in a very seamless way that's not too people can give their money easily digitally, but not think it's too much of a burden for them.
Yeah. But I guess for me, as somebody who's worked in the sector as well, I'm quite excited by that, because there's the whole, as useful as that kind of thoughtless donating is, we know that the longer term sustained donations, the kind of people who invest into a cause or a charity because they believe in it, they become so important for also doing some of that work,
the regular givers,
telling the work, propagating it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's where the long-term value comes in. That's not about giving in a bucket. That's not about that's about believing in the brand and believing in the mission of Christian Aid. And I think only where, as I was saying earlier, only when we can show where that money's going to really good use, can that longer term relationship be garnered. And I think that's where the opportunity is for Christian Aid in the longer term, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. We've maybe got 2 or 3 minutes left. So no pressure, no challenge. But if you could kind of think, what's the biggest challenge that people in your sector are facing, and maybe what's the biggest opportunity?
Biggest challenge to understand the opportunities that digital brings, but to put them together in a joined up way that makes everyone singing from the same hymn sheet within an organisation. I have a challenge with making sure directors and trustees, as I was saying earlier, they understand the full remit, purpose, opportunities that digital brings. So getting that all on a sheet of paper, or at least starting to, is my biggest challenge. Definitely, because otherwise it doesn't bring it all together. You need to have, if there's an organisational strategy, great. But if there's no digital strategy, where are we going? What's the plan?
Yeah. So getting a narrative, a clear narrative together about what it is you want to do and why you want to do it, which hopefully for a charity such as Christian Aid should be almost second nature, but nonetheless it comes with those complications. And what about
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, what about the biggest opportunities? Maybe they're the same.
So in an organisation like Christian Aid, I think let's be honest about it, we've shrunk as an organisation in the last year. We don't have as many people regionally fundraising for us. Given that digital is the big win for us, we need to be thinking, how can we make use of things like volunteer networks? How can they start to fundraise for us in a more effective way? How can they, maybe think about some of the channels that we use to fundraise and communicate digitally? So social media, for example, simple things, but it's using those extended networks to bring the money in and to increase the value of the messages that we're pushing out. All of the stories going on in all the countries we're operating in. There needs to be an extended network there, not just a London team that's pushing out messages and saying, donate to Christian Aid. It needs to be a wider effort.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to some of the innovations that you and others in your position are going to.
I haven't given too much away there, have I?
No, it's fine. We're still, I guess, in that kind of real innovation stage, aren't we? And like I said earlier, I fully expect that there'll be a lot of initiatives, not just in the charity sector, that people push out into the water and that they just sink, that they just disappear. But if ever there was a time to kind of try anything in the hope that something might work, not just thoughtlessly but intentionally, then I think probably now is that time.
I think luckily for us, we've got a warm supporter base who are really open to trying these things and staying in touch with Christian Aid, and because they are that loyal supporter base.
Yeah.
But having said that, we have an aging supporter base, and if we don't try and adapt and grow with the times, then that won't last forever. So we need to keep going and keep innovating, as you say, for sure.
Well, Chris, we've run out of time. You've been a fantastic guest, and I wish you every.
Thank you.
I'm confident in your success in this area, and for Christian Aid
Thanks,
and
Andy.
charities. Bless you.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's exciting times. Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Right.